Absolutely, absolutely, and you make a great point, and it's in our second journal. When we're trying to mitigate hypertrophy, often we're not chasing muscle growth with this clientele of athletes. Yeah, if you're a football player, a basketball player, maybe, right? But with our athletes, rarely are we trying to bulk somebody up. So we actually use cold water immersion in a lot of our heavy training phases to mitigate the mTOR pathway and mitigate hypertrophic responses. So we get the strength and the neural stimulus, but we make sure we negate any muscle growth, which is the antithesis of what you're talking to, but it's also a good tactic. So the bodybuilders are kind of right on there, and we use it for our benefit rather than what they would be doing it. But in terms of recovery, yes, we see a lot of value to cold water immersion. There's obviously the inflammation in the body that comes with just the daily training nature of what this sport is. So wherever we can, minimize and mitigate inflammatory responses, we try to do that. And whole body cold water immersion is a big one for that. There's also kind of the dopamine response of putting yourself through a pretty challenging exposure. So you get this psychological reset, which again is important for the nature of our athletes, who are very type A and sympathetically driven. So where they're getting sympathetic arousal from and a stimulus is an interesting conversation of when or when not to do that.
Right.
And so yeah, we use a lot of different modalities and recovery tactics, but certainly cold water immersion is central to what we can we do with our fighters.
Yeah, good question, Joey, and thanks, because that was made clear, and its importance in fight sports beyond bodybuilding. Same thing with nutrient timing, right? And the windows. In fight sports, you don't have time to sit there and debate whether or not muscle protein synthesis is going to occur in a 5-hour or 6-hour window. You just lost 4 pounds. You lost sodium. You lost potassium. You lost glycogen. You got to get it all back in. So I think that's where fight sports differentiate itself from a lot of the literature or the argument, because you have to take such measures, as you stated, particularly with the cold water immersion, and mitigating hypertrophy would be a goal. It's a fuel. All it is something that requires too much fuel in most cases in a fight sport. So
I think you make a great point. Like periodization of recovery is a paradigm now that is pretty commonplace as well, I would say, in high performance sports. So, we're not necessarily doing cold water immersion all the time.
Exactly.
We're doing very targeted times or very specific phases where either we're going through a heavy training load phase in a general preparation period where we might use cold water to negate any hypertrophy. Right. And then at other times in fight camp, we might be doing it because you need to get back on the mats tomorrow and maximize your training exposure. And therefore we can get some kind of neural relief and some inflammatory reduction, and get you back onto the mats where we're trying to optimize. So it's like, are we trying to minimize and mitigate over here, or are we trying to optimize? It's two different tools, but we never would just run cold water immersion across the year, because we want it to be an insult that has a stimulus to it. And if you expose someone to the same insult, as we all know, that stimulus is just going to get suppressed over time. So we try to be somewhat targeted and phased in when we'll do those types of approaches.
That's awesome information. Thanks. That's going to be appreciated.